Welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I am your host, Brad Swale. Today, I'm here with Donna Bahorich. She is a member of the Texas Historical Commission and a former member of the Texas State Board of Education, serving as chair from June 2015 to September 2019. Donna, how are you?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you. I think we're going to be talking quite a bit about education today. And as a father of three children, two of them currently in public schools, it's something I care about. So it's exciting to talk to you.
It's my passion too. So there we go.
Perfect. So so I guess, we'll start with the basics, warm up a little bit. Can you give us some of your background? You were formerly with the Texas Education Agency. Now you're with the Historical Commission. What's your background?
Okay. So I never was with the agency before I was elected to the State Board of Education. As State Board of Education, there are 15 members on the State Board of Education, and all are elected from districts around the state. And before I was serving on the state board, I actually worked for now Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. And so I was his district director, worked a session, helping constituents and doing, whatever they needed in Austin during a session in 2011. And so, been a volunteer and involved in things to do with education since 2007, I think it is. And with my local community. So was elected on the board and had served there for 8 years, was chair appointed by the governor for 4 of those years, and your term limited as chair, and really enjoyed that work. And, we did a lot of things.
What were some of the big things that you did?
Okay.
As chair, you were chair of the State Board of Education. There's got to be a lot of big things. What'd you do?
Okay. Yeah, it's really dangerous to ask an ex-politician what they accomplished, because that list could go on.
Well, maybe a better question is, that's a unique position to be in, right? It's not every day that I get to talk to someone that's in that position, and I have my own perspective from reading the news and having kids in school and having been in school. Maybe there's something that you picked up along the way that's kind of, I don't know, unique knowledge, something interesting, something that people don't typically realize. So either way you want to go.
Absolutely. One of the big things that I took on as a mission, if you will, when I was elected on the State Board of Education, was to see how I could create more transparency and more availability and accessibility to the processes that the board applies to our state curriculum standards development, as well as instructional materials approvals. Those are the two biggies that the State Board of Education are known for, and those are the ones that create much more interest in the public. I believe our board meetings, and I'm going to say hour because I keep referring to myself as an hour, and you'll hear that from time to time. I'm not on the board now, but it's hard for me to not say hour. But one of the things that the state board is blessed to have is a great deal of engagement, if you will, from parents, from educators, from publishers, from, regular folks, experts in various fields mostly regarding these state curriculum standards and textbook approvals. And so I did a lot of initiatives around transparency and how do you get more people to get more access. So just as an example, on state instructional materials, I'll call them textbooks and instructional materials. You can kind of consider the same thing. They're a little different, but in general, textbooks, around those approvals for textbook by the State Board of Education, it used to be when when I came onto the board, that you physically had to go to one of 20 service centers around the state in order to look at anything that the State Board of Education was considering to approve for covering social studies, English, science, whatever subjects we were tasked with working on approving textbooks for. You had to physically go to one of those 20 service centers. Well, that's not particularly convenient. So therefore, your engagement opportunities are pretty low, honestly, because it's just not that accessible. And all the textbooks have become digital in essence when I got on the board, and I started working with the publishers that were submitting at the time. And I started saying, hey guys, you need to create a parent portal so the State Board of Education can put all of these things online that we're even considering all during the review process, so that parents sitting in their pajamas, if they want to, at home, can log in, look and see what is being taught or suggested to be taught in any subject that they might have an interest in. And the publishers agreed they could do that. We changed that process on the state board. So that was one of my big things that I worked on. Another thing that I worked on pretty heavily during my time as chair was sometimes with these review processes, when it comes to curriculum standards, you might have 600 educators might apply because you have to volunteer to apply to approve the curriculum standards that are going to be used in classrooms throughout Texas. And so you might be working on English as an example, and you might have 600 people apply to be on a committee. And before, my time as the chair, or actually during some of that time as chair early on, when you applied, they would pick a very static committee. And that group of 60, 65, 70 educators had to agree to serve an entire year on that committee, because it usually takes about a year to do curriculum standards. And I wanted to make that more of an evergreen process, if you will, where half of the committee stays on the committee for 2 times, then rolls off. A new batch comes in for the other half of the committee. So you've got that carryover from the last work that was done from the previous committees, but yet you've got that fresh look. And by that process, you get many more educators who are able, first of all, to commit, because they've only got to commit basically to 2 months of meetings where they're going to have to go to Austin and do that work. So rather than 12 months, it's really hard to get a high-end educator who has got a tremendous background for this work to be able to get away from a district and commit for 12 months, 1 weekend a month, to come to Austin to do that work. So that evergreen process really was widely, appreciated by both the staff and I think the state board members. So those kinds of changes are the things that I worked on a lot. One of the other things I did, as you know, the State Board of Education is responsible for the permanent school fund. And that's a big part of our work. That's actually our only constitutional duty, that we're in charge of the permanent school fund management. And that's a $53 billion fund that distributes about $1 billion a year. And at the time, and while the whole time that I served on the board, it was a bifurcated management system where part of the fund was being managed by the school land board, and part of the fund, the majority of the fund, 3/4 of the fund, was being managed by the State Board of Education. But what ended up happening when you've got 2 different management organizations within the same fund, you end up having widely varying risk profiles, investments, and distribution goals. And it really became a problem. And I worked hard to make the case to legislators that you need to combine these groups. And so now, after I left, they actually passed a bill to put the permanent school fund under a corporation. So now there's united management, and with a single purpose and goal, which is, I think, going to serve our students much better with distributions. And school districts count on that money. That's a lot of money, and we want to make sure that it's strong, and it's the strongest fund of its kind in the country, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's really great. I mean, I can always appreciate transparency, and especially if I can do it in my pajamas. That's what transparency is about, right?
Exactly.
So there was House Bill 1605 in this last session, which I think was what initiated the process for the creation of the OER, which is the online education resources, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want you to go into more detail, but I think that it creates a portal for students to take benchmark tests online, but also has it's a resource for teachers across the state to access curriculum and perhaps I don't know, lesson plans or something like that. And that way, it's sort of more uniform across the state. Is that correct?
That is correct. The overall goal, obviously, for the OER process, which is the open education resource, it's not online. It is online, but the O is open, and that means that it's going to be available to whoever would like to log in. This is not some proprietary group of instructional materials that parents could. So, I mean, even if you're not in the public school system, you actually could take advantage of this open education resource material. And the goals of this, obviously, the overall goal for Texas education is to prepare students for success post-graduation. Excuse me. And to do that, you have many things that need to be put in place. One of those is effective teachers in every classroom. And a second goal is to have proven, rigorous instructional materials or textbooks, if you will, in order to be able to prepare those students for post-graduation. So this OER piece is working on high quality instructional materials. And you develop those optional, they're going to be optional to the districts. Districts, we believe in local control in Texas, and districts will be able to use the open education resources, or they can use whichever set of resources they feel meets their needs in their district and are approved by their local school boards.
Yeah.
But this open education resource is going to be a fantastic boon, if you will, for school districts that maybe are property poor, are not advantaged with a lot of high tax properties, and don't have as many resources to buy high quality materials that they'd like to, and activity books and all those kinds of things for their students. This will provide that equalization, if you will, across the entire state, that all students, all classrooms will be able to take advantage of this open education resource that is owned by Texas, put online by Texas, to be used by anyone in Texas or elsewhere for that matter. And then be able to be revised and kept up with to make sure that it stays up with the State Board of Education standards, and we'll have total control over it, in other words. But again, it's an optional thing for school districts. School districts can, choose whatever instructional materials they'd like to.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just an open place online. And I apologize. It is open education resources, as
Yeah.
you know. It's in my notes as open. I said online, whatever, because we're online. Maybe I don't know.
Acronyms are us when it comes to education.
So they're taking benchmark tests. I don't know through the system as well. I assume that's based on the curriculum. Obviously, that seems like a given.
Right.
Is that equivalent to like the STAR tests that students take?
No, it's not. This is mostly about getting, if you will, following this cognitive science of learning. One of the big benefits of this OER material that is one of the goals of this OER material is to provide science of learning techniques that we know help students learn. One of those, there's a thing called cognitive load theory, and that's where you break learning into smaller chunks, and you use lots of models, you ask lots of questions, you test very often. You're constantly quizzing and testing with these assessments the material that you're teaching the kids, so that there's this ability to get that from short term into more long term memory. And so you want to have students teach lessons that they've just been taught. That's a great way to learn it. All of these kinds of techniques are going to be a part of this open education resource material that's embedded in there with the kinds of activities and things that you're going to have access to as part of the material.
Yeah. So we're talking about all this, curriculum being online through the open education resources. Everybody can use it, as you say, even if you don't live in the state of Texas, you
Right.
could access it, right? So that's going to be useful for families across the state.
Absolutely.
And there's new curriculum, is my understanding as well, which is coming out, and I'm kind of curious how this new curriculum. I'm sure that's going to be part of this open education resources. Uh, how are Texas school children? You know, how does the curriculum differ from before to the new curriculum? When you
Okay.
change curriculum, how does that process even start?
Yeah, absolutely. So this basically was built on existing home learning materials that was part of the COVID response, if you will, when schools were shut down for that short period of time. And then the next year, as you will remember, we had hybrid learning. Some students were in class, some students were at home. During that whole time period, we needed a high quality material to put online so that any student could access it and schools could use it regardless of the situation that they were in. So that was the beginning of even moving toward this. And now those home learning materials are being revised extensively by Texas educators. I think there are about 3,300 lessons, as I understand it, with this particular tranche that is being submitted for approval, which are English language arts, kindergarten through fifth grade, and then we have math, kindergarten through eighth grade, and algebra that will be part of this group that is going through the approval process by the State Board of Education right now. And those lessons have been reviewed extensively. A lot of involvement from Texas Education Agency staff. There are contractors that were involved at the direction of the agency, a lot of stakeholders. I believe one of the education service centers, I want to say Education Service Center 13, but I'm not quite sure which one it was heavily involved in reviewing the lessons and providing input. There have been pilot districts that have been online since 2020, looking at these materials and seeing how they work in their classrooms. And we've had super positive results, as I understand it, from the district's use of this material. So, and then there's been what I'm serving on, which is the advisory board for this open education resource product. I think there are 15 of us on there as well. And I'm one of the advisors that have looked at the product as well to see if it conforms to what is required in the legislation, which if I'm just looking here to see if I can read this for you, is more about that it's of high quality. The material has to be of high quality. It's got to be aligned first and foremost with the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. So it has to be a completely aligned product. It's suitable for the age and grade of the students that it's intended for, and it's free from bias and factual error. And those are the things that the advisory board has been working on to look through the lessons with.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up COVID, and it sounds like y'all are taking they. It sounds like they took some lessons from COVID and sort of applying that here for a sort of this brave new world of education and online and mixed online, that sort of thing. I think a lot of parents are happy that their kids are back in school, obviously, but there's
Oh,
going to be as technology develops and as society moves forward, there's going to be more online resources for sure. But during that time, as you know, a lot of kids fell behind.
oh,
There's
absolutely.
Yeah, and so I'm curious if that was taken into account with the new curriculum. How do we bring those kids up to speed? With this new curriculum, are they? It certainly can't be all new concepts, but maybe there was some consideration put in place. All right, these kids are behind. We got this new curriculum. What are we going to do to make sure that they're not left behind even further?
Absolutely. Well, just to kind of bring you up to speed, the things that I'm pretty excited about that I've been reviewing as part of the advisory board with the English language arts product that I've been mostly focusing on, it's very content rich. kids love stories, and this curriculum that's being designed in the English language arts area has history, science, arts, all integrated into it. And it's great stories. Some of the stories they've chosen along the way, very interesting, but also true history stories the kids will be learning. So they're going to be learning and building their knowledge base as they go along. So it's not just learning skills in English language arts, as is typical of a classroom that they would see today. They're going to be learning actual knowledge content that you want them to raise their knowledge base with and build brick upon brick, if you will, year after year. As part of the English language arts, it's going to be integrated from history and science and technology and the arts. I think that is really huge. And just as an aside, that's how I trained my sons. I actually have an unusual background because I was a home educator for 13 years with my 3 sons. And that's how I trained my kids. We did everything as an integrated unit. When we were studying, we used actual history, science concepts, the arts, learning about literature, all of those things were embedded as all of it. It wasn't like, okay, now I'm teaching science, now I'm teaching English, and we're going to work on skills all day long. No, I wanted them to learn actual content as they went along. So I think that's exactly what this is built on. And that's going to address a knowledge gap for disadvantaged students. There's a great book, if anyone's interested in this topic. It's called Knowledge Gap. And the author is Wexler, W-E-X-L-E-R. And she's got some great information about this issue, where she did a lot of research on do we have an achievement gap with different groups of kids, or do we have a knowledge gap? And she came down on the side of, we got a knowledge gap. She's got a fascinating story in there about some researchers who they did a group of 64 7th to 8th grade kids, and they figured that group of kids, probably there were a fair amount of them that might know something about baseball and the rules of baseball. And so they did this reading test, if you will, and they put like a wooden board, and you were going to be read a passage of half of an inning, and you were to move the pieces on the board, if you will, just like the story describing half an inning would tell you to do. And the fascinating thing is, the good readers who didn't know anything about baseball did not do well on the exam. But the kids who were poor readers, who knew quite a bit about baseball, did great.
Interesting.
On the exam. And, that it kind of says, okay, the difference between a good reader and a poor reader when it comes to comprehension, reading comprehension, may have to do with kids being exposed to knowledge. And that's what's so exciting to me about the OER. I mean, I've gotten really excited. You can probably tell I'm a little animated about it.
That's good.
Reading the materials, because I thought, this is good stuff here. The kids are going to enjoy these stories. They're going to learn some things about things that they've never been exposed to. And one of the things that, currently in our social studies, just as an example, our kids don't learn anything about world history until they get to 10th grade, and they start learning about world history according to our current standards. That's just the way it's been set up. In 6th grade, they'll learn a little bit about current cultural, it's a world cultures class for 6th grade in social studies, but that's all current stuff. It's not a world history overview or anything. And so for the first time, we'll be starting those concepts about Greece. Ancient Greece is an example where we got our democracy, the foundation of democracy started. Kids will be learning about ancient Greece. They're going to be learning about Rome, and a variety of ancient cultures, Mayan, Inca. They're going to hear all those stories as in elementary school and not wait until they get to high school to start to begin to build their content knowledge. I love that. I'm so excited about it. And
Yeah.
I think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, that is great. I mean, I'm trying to think as you were saying that kids don't learn about world history until 10th grade or whatever. I'm trying to think, man, I went to public school in Texas. Did it take that long for me to get there? And maybe it did. Um, but that's great. I try to teach my kids, open their eyes to all the different, as much as I can outside of school to stuff like that. So it sounds like this is going to be pretty different from what we're currently using in Texas schools.
Uh-huh.
Um, how are teachers aware of this? Do they have buy-in? Are they, how do they feel about this if we know that information at all?
Well, from the pilot districts there's been several districts around, and I don't know what all of them were. I know one of them was excited by, was one of the author of the bill, Representative Buckley, House Bill 1605, we started out talking about, that brought this whole high quality instructional materials bill to the legislators, was very excited about a couple of elementaries in his district that he saw this high quality material and how rich the learning was. These were disadvantaged kids, and he was amazed at what all they were able to do and what they were working on at their young ages. And he got very inspired by that. And that's one of the reasons we have the bill. He and Brandon Creighton were the ones who got this bill across the line and started this whole process. And so I think that, that's just so important to recognize that there's been some school districts who have already piloted this since 2020, as I said, kind of started during the COVID era.
Sure.
But then the other goal that I want to make sure that your listeners understand is it's not just that we want kids to have a rich content. We also want teachers to be able to focus on the learning differentiation. There are a variety of kids who have different support needs, if you will, whether it's English language learners or special education kids or whatever it might be. They have special supports that are needed by teachers. And teachers, if you look at the surveys about how much time they spend just trying to get their lesson plans together. I think Education Week, Representative Buckley had in his op-ed that he wrote about his piece of legislation, is that teachers were spending 57 hours a week, 54 hours a week, I believe. And 10 of those hours were spent on trying to get their curriculum and instructional materials together. And they certainly aren't given that many hours during their planning periods in order to do that. So they were doing a lot of that work after school. Well, that's a lot of hours to have to devote beyond the school time just to get, good curriculum materials in places, your lesson plan set up. So the idea with this open education resource and all the activity books and the quizzes and the variety of things that have been done for the educators with the OER is that they will have to spend less time assembling, getting all those resources together they need to, and more time concentrating on the delivery of the material to the students and differentiating where as needed for the kids in their classroom. So to me, that's such a big help to teachers. Spend more time figuring out how to meet the needs of individual kids instead of how am I going to teach the Texas TEKS. So so I think also the idea of providing rigorous that you can count on. These are at grade level lessons and lesson plans and activities and quizzes. All of that is going to help because you don't have to worry. Am I teaching below the grade level? They are going to be grade leveled. So that's very important. So in many ways, I think teachers can rest assured in districts who choose to go with this can feel comfortable about it. But these materials still have to go through the State Board of Education approval process. So the hope is that they'll make that list that will be approved in November of 2024.
Sorry, my microphone was off in case I didn't make any noise while you were talking. So I want to ask just a couple more questions before we sign off. I'm sure you are aware of this, especially since COVID. A lot of conversations surrounding education can get pretty heated. I mean, a lot of that's online. I'm sure in person it's a little bit different, right? And
Right.
I think that's maybe there's some cultural differences that are sort of arising, and I don't really know. It's hard to know sort of how the origins of all of that. And I'm wondering, does the new curriculum, does it address that? Is it trying to take into account everybody, making sure that the product is smooth for everybody to going forward? Is there does it help create a common culture so that the people aren't at each other's throats when they talk about education?
Yeah, I mean, the intent is that these materials will be free from bias. That's one of the charges, if you will, of putting the material together. That would be factually based and free from bias. I mean, I think we're living in a time, unfortunately, where you can find bias. I mean, people can find bias everywhere. I don't know
Yeah, or
what it is. If they
maybe
just
they'll
disagree with it, it seems biased to them, right? If they
yeah
don't like
the
the facts.
the
So,
specter of bias is there, and they think that
yeah.
it's there, whatever. No, but
Right.
that's
But
good
I
to
think
hear.
they're working hard to make sure that, and that's one of the reasons that one of the intents on this development of this item to being a Texas product is that Texas is a very diverse group of cultures across the whole state. And
Yep.
so the idea of Texas-owned, Texas-based materials being available for classrooms for free is something that's going to include, a lot of Texas heroes, a lot of Texas historical figures, and impactful people in our state history that kids will come across as they're learning stories and working through these materials. So that's absolutely going to be a big part of it, and was a very important part in the development, that there's a broad spectrum of diverse cultural experiences and familiarity, if you will, teaching about different religions and cultures and that sort of thing is part of the material.
Yeah. So when does this happen again? How often does this happen? New curriculum? Is this something that the legislature tasked that they said this needs to be done now, and that's only when it happens? Or is there
No,
a
no, it's going to be an ongoing process for,
okay?
year after year, honestly, because typically at the state board, every year is a different, right now, they're going to be processing about 140 some items, if you will, for this English language, arts and reading and math products. That's what's being submitted right now that OER is part of, but there are, like I said, about 140 different products that are being submitted. So they're going through this over the summer. They'll go through this huge vetting process where they're looked at quality rubrics and suitability rubrics, and as to filling that out for all of those materials. So when those materials are reviewed, then they get presented to the State Board of Education with reports that'll have how each item fared, if you will, on the rubrics. And then at the end of the day, in November, the state board is going to take a vote on, of the 143 items submitted, or how many ever there were, who goes on the high quality instructional material list. That will be the official State Board of Education list. And school districts will have an incentive to adopt anything on that list, including the open education resources, which will be free. They'll be able to adopt anything on that list and actually get an extra $40, if you will, for choosing something off of the extremely vetted, high quality instructional material list that the state board is putting together. So that's going to be an important process, and that process is going to happen. Typically, it happens every year. There's an instructional material review of some sort that needs to go on every year. You got a different set of materials you're looking at from year to year. But right now happens to be this material that has to do with English and also math.
Okay, cool. Well, is there anything that I don't know, that I didn't ask you about? Am I missing something? Is there a final piece to this? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot. We could talk about education and curriculum, I'm sure, for hours.
And that is absolutely correct. I think we've hit the highlights. You know, I think just recognizing that what's important about these open education resource products is this is going to be a Texas product that is reviewed and worked on by Texas educators, and will have more of a Texas flavor, if you will, that kids will be learning a base of knowledge on, as well as, a broad look at history. The idea is we want kids to not just get exposed in silos, if you will. When it's science class, this is the only time you hear about science concepts. Let's expose kids across the curriculum and make it interconnected. And it's going to be a lot richer, I think. And I, have high hopes that from the results that we've seen already from the pilots, that richness will result in better student outcomes. And that's the whole point of Texas education. We want outcomes for students that promote their success in life and as good citizens of our country. So,
yeah. And I was going to end with, do you think parents are going to be excited about this? And you said better student outcomes. And I can't imagine a parent not being excited about better student outcomes. So it seems like that's the case. It seems like this is going to be an all around good. Like a lot of people are going to be pumped about it.
It's going to be great. It has great potential to be terrific. And plus, if schools choose to use this, because you can just get it online as a parent, I can sit down, oh, my kids are studying this particular topic in English. I can ask questions about that. Well, what did you learn today about the Greeks? I can even do that. There's going to be letters sent home to the parents to say, these are the kinds of activities you could do with your child that would go right along with what we're studying at school. You can get access to this. You have a parent portal where you can get in and see exactly what's being taught and what exactly the lesson is on, and you can quiz your own kids. So to me, it has a tremendous potential to really put the parent and the teacher on the same page in order to support students, because we know those students do best when you've got support from home as well as support from the school.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen to that for sure. Well, Donna Bahorich, I really appreciate you taking the time. Is there, I don't know, where can people find the stuff? I mean, is it easily accessible online? Do they just Google it?
I think it's going to be up soon. I don't know what the link is because I haven't seen. If you go to the Texas Education Agency website, there is a high quality instructional material page.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that when this is actually goes live, which I expect at any moment, there'll be links on that high quality instructional material page. Perfect. Is what I'm assuming. That is a good question, though.
No, I'm sure. I mean, it's if the link's not up there, it's impossible for you to know it right now. But it will be, I believe, and from my understanding, it will be probably the next day or two.
Exactly.
And then I can go online and I can teach myself all the things that my third grader, soon to be fourth grader, what he's going to learn, and I can make sure that I can help him with his homework.
Absolutely. That's the thing I love about this, is that you can, it's not like, I can't figure out what they're teaching. I get some little blurb about it, but I don't really know what the lessons are or questions I could quiz them on. And these materials will even have questions for parents to ask their kids. And I just love that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Donna, thank you so much. I really appreciate taking the time.
Absolutely. Education is my fave, and I love talking about it.
Awesome. Thank you.